Hello, Merida here. I know you've been looking for stories. I know my voice sounds a little different. I've tried to make it a little bit easier for you to actually understand me. Most people can't. But I wanted to read you a story today. I don't know if you're stuck at home with your 3 little brothers, or if they're 3 little bears. But I can tell you one thing. I am tired of sitting around doing nothing. I can't even go shoot my bow. So I decided to read a story. And since my little brothers love food so much, it's a story that they know very well. It's called Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I don't know if you like meatballs, but they're very good. We were all sitting around the big kitchen table. It was Saturday morning, pancake morning. Mom was squeezing oranges for juice. Henry and I were betting on how many pancakes we could eat, and Grandpa was doing the flipping. Seconds later, something flew through the air, headed toward the kitchen ceiling, and landed right on Henry. After we realized that the flying object was only a pancake, we all laughed, even Grandpa. Breakfast continued quite uneventfully. All the other pancakes landed in the pan, and all of them were eaten, even the one that landed on Henry. That night, touched off by the pancake incident at breakfast, Grandpa told us the best telltale story at bedtime he'd ever told. Across an ocean, over lots of huge bumpy mountains, across 3 hot deserts and 1 smaller ocean, there lay the tiny town of Chew and Swallow. In most ways, it was very much like any other tiny town. It had a main street lined with stores, houses with trees and gardens around them, and a schoolhouse, about 300 people, and some assorted cats and dogs. But there were no food stores in the town of Chew and Swallow. They didn't need any. The sky supplied all the food they could possibly want. The only thing that was really different about Chew and Swallow was its weather. It came 3 times a day, at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everything that everyone ate came from the sky. Very interesting. Whatever the weather served, that was what they ate. But it never, ever rained rain. It never snowed snow, and it never blew just wind. It rained things like soup and juice. Could you even imagine soup falling from the sky? Especially hot soup? That would be extremely scary. It snowed mashed potatoes and green peas, and sometimes the wind blew in storms of hamburgers. Oh my, hamburgers. The people could watch the weather report on television in the morning, and they would even hear a prediction for the next day's food. When the townspeople went outside, they carried their plates, cups, glasses, forks, spoons, knives, and napkins with them. That way, they would always be prepared for any kind of weather. If there were leftovers, and there usually were, the people took them home and put them in their refrigerators in case they got hungry between meals. Oh my goodness. He's catching soup in an umbrella. It's actually pretty brilliant. Good job. The menu varied. By the time they woke up in the morning, breakfast was coming down. After a brief shower of orange juice, low clouds of sunny-side-up eggs moved in, followed by pieces of toast. Butter and jelly sprinkled down for the toast, and most of the time it rained milk afterwards. My soul. For lunch one day, frankenfurters, already in their rolls. Now, frankenfurters are hot dogs, if you don't know. They blew in from the northwest at about 5 miles an hour. There were mustard clouds nearby. Then the wind shifted to the east and brought in baked beans. A drizzle of soda finished off the meal. They don't even have ceilings in their restaurants. They just open their mouths. Dinner one night consisted of lamb chops, becoming heavy at times with occasional ketchup, Periods of peas and baked potatoes were followed by gradual clearing, with a wonderful jello setting in the west. The sanitation department of Chew and Swallow had a rather unusual job for a sanitation department. It had to remove the food that fell on the houses and sidewalks and lawns. The workers cleaned things up after every meal and fed all to the cats and dogs. Then they emptied some of it into the surrounding oceans for the fish and turtles and whales to eat. The rest of the food was put back into the earth so that the soil would be richer for the people's flower gardens. Could you imagine if that was trash in your town? Food. You just feed it to the dogs. Feed it to the cats. They're always getting food. Life for the townspeople was delicious until the weather took a turn for the worst. One day, there was nothing but gorgonzola cheese all day long. The next day, there was only broccoli, all overcooked. And the next day, there were Brussels sprouts and peanut butter with mayonnaise. Oh. Another day, there was a pea soup fog. No one could see where they were going, and they could barely find the rest of the meal that got stuck in the fog. The food was getting larger, and so were the portions. The people were getting frightened. Violent storms blew up frequently. Awful things were happening. One Tuesday, there was a hurricane of breads and rolls all day long into the night. There were soft rolls and hard rolls, some without seeds and some with. There was white bread and rye and whole wheat toast. Most of it was larger than they had ever seen bread and rolls before. It was a terrible day. I like bread. I don't think it would be that terrible, but that's just me. Everyone had to stay indoors. Roofs were damaged, and the sanitation department was beside itself. The mess took the workers 4 days to clean up, and the sea was full of floating rolls. To help out, the people piled up as much bread as they could in their backyards. The birds picked at it a bit, but it didn't stay there and got staler and staler. There was a storm of pancakes. One morning, and the downpour of maple syrup that nearly flooded the town. A huge pancake covered the school. No one could get it off because of its weight, and so they had to close the school. Could you imagine if that's why your school was closed? A giant pancake. Lunch one day brought 15-inch drips of cream, cheese, and jelly sandwiches. Everyone ate themselves sick, and they ended up with a stomachache. There was an awful salt and pepper wind, accompanied by an even worse tomato tornado. People were sneezing themselves silly and running to avoid the tomatoes. The town was a mess. There were seeds and pulp everywhere. The sanitation department gave up. Everyone feared for their lives. They couldn't go outside most of the time. Many homes had been badly damaged by giant meatballs. Stores were boarded up, and there was no more school for the children. So a decision was made to abandon the town of Chew and Swallow. It was a matter of survival. Look at this food. There is a pickle on the roof. There's ice cream. That poor person is stuck under a hamburger. It's not a great way to go. Poor thing. The people glued together the giant pieces of stale bread, sandwich style, with peanut butter, took the absolute necessities with them, and set sail on their rafts for a new land. You got to love it when your sails are cheese and pizza. You get hungry, there's a snack. After being afloat for a week, they finally reached a small coastal town, which welcomed them. The bread had held up surprisingly well enough for them to build temporary houses for themselves out of it. Bread houses. The children began school again, and the adults all tried to find themselves places in the new land. The biggest change they had to make was getting used to buying food at a supermarket. They found it odd that food was kept on shelves, packaged in boxes, cans, and bottles. Meat that had to be cooked was kept in large refrigerators. Nothing came down from the sky except rain and snow. How boring. The clouds above their heads were not made of fried eggs. No one ever got hit by a hamburger again, and nobody dared to go back to chew and swallow to find out what had happened to it. They were too afraid. Henry and I were awake until the end of Grandpa's story. I remember his goodnight kiss. The next morning we woke up to see snow falling outside our window. We ran outside for breakfast and ate a little faster than usual so we could go sledding with Grandpa. It's funny, but even as we were sliding down the hill, we thought we saw a giant pat of butter at the top, and we could almost smell mashed potatoes. Now, I don't know about you, but food falling from the sky could be good and could be bad. I mean, you can imagine a giant meatball falling on your head. It could be a problem. However, ice cream, I love me some ice cream, and so do the boys. Fergus, no. I tell you, they just will not leave me alone. I'm going to have to go and deal with them. I hope you have a wonderful evening and the rest of your week. And don't eat any food that has fallen from the sky. You don't know where it's been.